Hello, welcome to Quackalope. Thank you for being here. Today we are bringing you, a post-prototype gameplay conversation of Arydia. I cannot,
By
for the
far off
life
names.
of me. I like tossing an R in there for some reason.
Yes.
You'll see that over in the gameplay. We just finished up playing through most of everything the prototype has in store. I think there's a few other like one-offs or NPCs. I know we used all the miniatures that were available. There's still a few cards that we haven't found and upgrades and stuff that we probably could have done as well. But we have 2 gameplay videos going up so that you can check it out. And the big title of this, the title of the video that the humans clicked on to watch is, Will You Like Arydia?
Arydia. And we're not targeting the dwarfs or the elves or the halflings with this video?
No, just the humans.
Just the humans?
Just the human peoples.
Okay.
They actually have a Kickstarter exclusive. All dwarfs get this game for free. It's pretty remarkable. You just have to prove your heritage. That being said, the title, the question that I figured we present, because I don't want to do a review. We have thoughts and final impressions and an overview of what this game is doing, but honestly, it's promising so much that all I can do is kind of guide and steer. I don't have something to fully review yet.
Yeah.
So the premise of the video is, will you enjoy Arydia?
Arydia.
I cannot say that name for some reason. This is coming from 2 different perspectives as well, which I think are interesting and important to put in context.
You've played multiple role-playing games.
I like RPG games, stories, adventures.
I have never played an RPG game.
Not once. She doesn't even like silly voices when I do them.
So, this was kind of a gateway, I feel like, to an RPG game for me.
Yeah.
I know you have, some of your intentions are to do an RPG with us.
Yep.
And this was kind of an introduction to me. I didn't hate it.
So, do you want to give, or do you want me to give, a quick overview on what we're doing here, and then we can get into the full conversation?
You can give the overview.
Okay, quick overview on what Arydia is doing here on the table. This is going to be an RPG-esque adventure game where you select your character, your race, your class, your abilities, your proficiencies, your gear, your items, your upgraded elements and skill slots and cards with 3 different tableau systems here in front of us, preparing and allowing us to explore a variety of different pathways. If you're familiar with classic RPG tropes and character classes and upgrade powers, that's what this game is going to give you. It has really nice production quality so far on the prototype, with slotted locations allowing us to take dials in and out, an overworld map that we're exploring on, and then zoomed in medium, small, large, and long tiles that I think there's going to be 70 plus of each set of those.
Wow.
That allow you to explore this region and go on adventures in this world. This is really a living, breathing world, giving you opportunities to engage in dialogue with other players, with NPCs throughout the environment, come across events and watch as the world changes and unfolds. As you play, you'll go through a combination of NPC dialogue and choose your own adventure style interactions, combined with combat systems where you sit down on the board, you do your very best to engage with the weapons that you have, take a limited amount of movement and actions, kind of a similar or classic dungeon crawl element, with a cool hit point location system that allows you to target, trigger, hit defensive points, and really engage with a creature in probably one of the best abstracted versions of a combat and wound system that I've ever played. I really like what it's doing there. Finally, this game is going to escalate and the world around you is going to grow. This is not just an open world RPG. There's a core story and premise that you're following along with, and your character is going to be an integral part in that story. As you play the game, NPCs will be replaced with newer versions of them that have been updated based off the conversations that you've had. Your location and your travel world deck, your hit location, your mob deck will all change and adapt based off of what decisions you've made. If you've eaten something poisonous, if you've been wounded multiple times in a single location, if you have heard and crossed path of, thunder rolling across the hills and plains, all of that will come back in to make this world feel alive and fresh and living. And finally, this game is going to reward you for exploring your own storyline. It has keys and elements and secret narrative pathways that we haven't been able to explore at all because we're working with a prototype that will, as far as I can tell, take you down some interesting routes and potentially lead to some really rewarding crossplay or replayability as you explore all the different branching pathways with all the different character classes that you could potentially have in your party.
Great overview.
Thank you so much. I like this game a lot.
Should I jump in?
I want to hear your thoughts. So go ahead and set up like where we just finished the gameplay, and I actually cut you off before giving like a final impression to the camera because I wanted to do this little video.
Yeah.
You weren't sold on this when we first played it. Where are we now?
Where are we now? It's a solid game. I would be happy to play it. So in my mind, I can't help but contrast it to Lands of Galzier. That was the most recent open world exploration game that we played. Lands of Galzier involved an app that you needed to do, but it had individual storylines that you were going down. The characters evolved. Like I had my friend that I kept coming back to and finding her in different locations. Yeah. And so all the things that you were describing, it reminded me of Lands of Galzier. And I just couldn't help but comparing them. And between the two, I actually like this one better. I like the card system. I like the index, the active deck, the dead deck. I like how it's all physical. It's all tangible. You don't need that app, which for me, being Jewish, it's hard to play with electronic devices on Shabbos, on the weekend. So I enjoy the fact that this would be accessible on Shabbos. That was my immediate interaction. Other than that, I liked the fact, and I mentioned this at the end of the last video, that you don't need to actually roleplay to do it. All the NPC cards have little trigger words that the guide who is reading the card out to you can read you the trigger words and give you the choices to make.
But did you have some fun role-playing a little bit?
Still
outside of your comfort zone?
It's still a little outside my comfort zone, but I did enjoy because you were being silly. I was able to be silly. I felt less self-conscious. But I do enjoy the fact that it caters to both communities. It caters to the communities that want to roleplay, that want to stand up. I saw some of the cards in the rulebook said you would bow, and some of them you twirl your mustache, or you rub your hands near the fire. So you can do the actual physical actions, and you could also do the funny voices. One of my characters had a cough in that I kept doing.
And you could blame it on the card.
And
if someone's like, why are you bowing? It's like, the card told me to bow. What am I supposed to do?
Right. So I like it caters to that world who wants to really deeply dive into it. And it also caters to the world that likes the combat system, the just advancement of their character, all these...
Or just the straight up, would you like to ping... Like, at a few of the narrative points, I'd read the flavor text, and then I said, would you like to engage with answers back and forth like an NPC, or do you want storm, flowers, adventure, guild?
Right. And some of the times I chose to engage with it just randomly, and other times I did ask for my choices. I was like, hey, what haven't I interacted with? That's more the completionist side of me that just wants to hit every point and know I've gotten it all.
And on my side, I was very content going,
I missed something.
I just forgot that in the conversation. Yeah. How silly of me.
Those are kind of my initial thoughts. Did you have any specific questions?
No, I was just curious where you were right now. I know Alex put out his review, and from the conversations that I've had with him, the areas that he's mixed right now have been overland exploration and the actual battle system. I don't know that I like the overland exploration at the moment. It's a little confusing just as a way to weed stamina from you. I'm not sure how it develops yet.
I think it's very thematic, though. As you're traversing land, you get tired. We know traversing the country makes us exhausted for like a couple of days.
The thing that has me curious is something like this, Lightning Storm, that we just added to the bottom of our deck that we haven't been able to get to yet. If this develops and progresses in a really, really compelling way, where the overworld is like, marauding troops of villagers and caravans that have been escaping battle, or a town that's been laid siege to and smoke is filling the air, that could actually become really, really compelling and a really interesting choice the farther you get away from your safe haven or your camp. Because if you get knocked out, you're going to be teleported back home, basically, and have to restart the adventure with everything like mobs respawning that you weren't able to defeat. As far as the battle system, I do think it plays into that classic RPG element where you're rolling a d20 die and resolving that based off your skills and abilities. I really cannot wait to see all the different items and gear that I'm able to upgrade. But I'm super familiar and comfortable with this like little d20 die. This is one of my best friends when it comes to board games. And so I don't mind the battle system at all. I actually find it really, really interesting.
I actually didn't know a D20 actually had 20 sides. I counted it our
True.
first
You
interaction with this
did
game.
actually sit down and double check.
I did.
You were like, no, there's no way they got 20 sides on this thing.
I was, and I went through all the numbers. I got up to about 15, and then I gave in that it was probably correct.
Probably does have 2.
Regarding the open world system, I like the aestheticness of it, the visual of the fact that it zooms out kind of, and you're able to traverse, and then you hyper zoom in, and then you explore the land even further.
I really like these long, medium, and small cards.
But I like that overview of it. I like the fact that you can see where your party has been, what you've traversed, what you've explored. If you fail into getting on that tile, you have to try it again.
Yeah. Yeah, you can definitely be buffeted. And like you were saying with the zooming in and out, I like how it does that on the world map. Some of them overlaid really nicely.
Yeah.
Some of them just expanded the room. I actually find it really cool that I don't quite know how the environment is going to change based off of what I'm interacting with on the tabletop. This game is making a ton of promises to me. And I think based off of the publisher and his history and the fact that he spent 7 years developing this thing, this is a publisher that doesn't put out much. When he does, it is legendary.
What else has he put out?
I think it's Zia or something along those lines. It's a space exploration sort of. I think it hits on similar tropes.
Have you played it?
Jam was telling me about it.
Okay.
He was kind of raving on what this publisher does, and so I'm actually just finding out a lot about this myself. But from what I've heard, this publisher takes 5 to 7 years to develop and work and produce a product. And when he puts it out, one of the reasons why this has already raised over $1 million on Kickstarter is because people are waiting. People know what to expect. They know quality comes with time and with patience and with dedication. And from what I've seen in the prototype here, this being my first experience with all of this, it's pretty mind-blowing. From custom painted miniatures to a full little working story and elements that I think, as far as I'm concerned, I'd say this game is innovating in a variety of ways I haven't seen other games do. I like the combat system. I really like the player interactions and the narrative. I think it's probably fairly innovative in the way that it's integrating a dungeon crawl-esque system into the tabletop environment here. I'm sure other people have played with it, but for me, a lot of this like magnification and then zooming back out of this open world adventure, it's doing stuff and iterating on games like Seventh Continent, which is a big tile-laying kind of open-world exploration game, in a way that I think makes everything feel much more alive.
I like, you were talking about the quality, and that quality comes with time. The quality of this prototype is amazing. Like, just all the pieces. A couple small things that I was thinking about as you were talking. The heads are detachable. You can custom design your minis.
In the prototype, the heads are detachable.
You can custom design your character based on the name that you've picked out. All of these things are interchangeable. I like how the game made you change yours.
It did.
You failed at a task, and it made you change yours to timid.
Yeah.
So I like how the game is interacting with it. Like, your title is no longer... What had you picked before? Skittish?
Skittish.
So you're not skittish anymore. You're timid.
Yeah.
Might be even worse. But the name changes, the title changes, the race changes.
And it makes everything tactical. Like, all the locations where I'm slotting in gear and items and bits and pieces, like you're talking about, everything's physical, and that makes a difference with the experience.
It's all important. Also, it also impacts the game. The fact that we each got like a little key card that had something secret that we were keeping from each other, that was a whole nother storyline to dive into. It's amazing.
So the question we asked and promised that we'd answer by the end of this video: will you enjoy, or would you like Arydia? For me, the answer is 100% yes, but I'm not answering for me. I'm answering for you. And so there's a few things that I think the audience should evaluate, and feel free to add in anything that you have. If you like open world story-driven adventure games, if games like Seventh Continent have promised you something that you anticipated and maybe let you down along the way because it just didn't quite function how you wanted, I think this game might be something that you really enjoy. If you already play RPGs, if you're sort of a hybrid gamer like I am, where you love RPG games but you also love board games, this is a sweet spot right in the middle. And I think you, and hopefully a few of your RPG friends, will probably enjoy this game. And then finally, if if you want something that is going to be crazy production quality, exclusive to Kickstarter, the platform for the most part, and you want something that just feels good, looks impressive, and you like tactical little bits that flip, twist, pop off, and lock in place, this is 100% going to be something you'll enjoy.
Yeah. If you're an RPG fan and you're having trouble finding friends to play with, this can be a really gateway game into the deeper RPG world. So. I was thinking about that if someone really likes RPG but they just can't find anyone to play it with, introduce this game to them, because it's a really great transition for someone who's just worried about the acting, worried about all the silliness, worried about having the decisions to be so open-ended.
Yeah.
This is a great gateway.
As far as the other end of that, if you're a dungeon crawl primary player and you really want to be able to min-max stats and prioritize sort of your actions, this is going to give you that. But from my experience in the prototype so far, just like an RPG lends itself to a bit of chaos and a bit of randomness with that D20, you're only going to be able to mitigate so far. It's not a perfect information game, and it doesn't intend to be. Along with that, I think this is going to be one of those games where, sad to say, you're going to get about as much, well, you'll get more then, but you're really going to get the most out of it if you put in as much as possible to it. That means role-playing when the card tells you to. That means leaning into the story and the narrative and having fun and being weird. And if you, yourself, the person who's going to own this game, is not yet comfortable with that type of play experience, you're going to have to commit yourself to pushing through some insecurities in order to make the game group have fun, or this really could be a letdown. If I could see this being really dry, if all you're doing is reading A-B font here and there and there. I think this game requires you to enjoy it in order to enjoy it. Mm-hmm. And so that's a big part of the conversation. Can you get past that barrier?
It doesn't have as many typical game mechanics as I think I would have liked. It doesn't have so much deck building or drafting or things like that. And
once we get to the store and start purchasing gear, you might get a little bit more of that.
So it has upgrading, but in the typical game mechanics where you think that you can control things and mitigate a lot more, the D20 is really important. That the randomness aspect, and you can have in a role-playing cube that gives you a +3 to a die roll, but you can't earn them as quickly as you would want to mitigate. I'm curious if any of the skills actually mitigate the die.
Yeah, it definitely gives you a lot of pathways and a lot of control, but early on, from my experience, it's not going to be perfect information. And you're going to be able to lean into things a bit, but sometimes it's just going to be a slightly higher roll than you're going to be able to carry. And with a D20, you've got a decent amount of swing that you can control for on one roll, and 2 or 3 bad rolls in, you just can't work your way out of it. You've just done goofed, and there's no way coming back. Outside of that, I do think that there's some things that I really am still waiting for. And so if you're not comfortable gambling on a game, maybe this is one that you keep your eye on and late pledge or back later or pick up once it actually arrives, because I think there is still a decent amount that's in development. I want to see the combat system escalate. I want to see some of these medium or large tiles actually be creatures that we're fighting, like a giant dragon swooping out of the sky, and you pull out a tile. One of it's the terrain that you're on, and then the medium tile is the freaking beast that you're attacking.
I'd like the monster attack decks to be specific to each monster, kind of. I get it that so these skills are specific to the monsters, but it'd be cool if the decks cater.
I do like that the mob deck tweaks and balances, and you can add to it, though. And so depending on how you're feeling...
I'm curious what we added.
As a party, well, let's take a look. Depending on how you're feeling as a party, old bread. The memory of the bread you ate fills you with energy. Active player gains +3 hearts and destroys this card, or nothing happens and draw again.
That's
so
cool.
We supplemented this with a positive trait.
Right.
What a cool little mechanic that is.
I was assuming it would have been negative.
I thought so too.
Poisoned us.
I thought so too.
But that's really cool that you can have some positivity in that deck.
And so I do think that there's still some things that we're waiting for. And the biggest thing that I'm willing to just bank on, but I haven't actually seen or heard tale of, and I might need to go read the Kickstarter page to double check on this. I don't know what the overarching story is. I just know that we're adventurers. I know we're doing a little bit of stuff. I know I've explored through the prologue that we're going to war and getting coin, and we're kind of exiles from a strange land, but I don't really know what else we have happening here. And depending on the writing and the world and the exploration, how the story progresses, really depends on how good this game is going to end up being. This could be a 10 out of 10 or a 9 out of 10 if the story is emotional and compelling and evocative. But if the story falls flat and you're putting a gamble on the ability of the designer and publisher to write a good story, so far it seems like they can when it comes to small stories and small dialogue. But you're banking on that. It could be a 6.5 if the story is subpar. So keep that in mind.
One more thing. Some people sometimes ask price point. Do you have any idea of how expensive this back is going?
All in's like $160 or $190.
Okay. And do you think that's a fair price for what it's giving you?
I have already backed it at that price. I did after I got done playing it with Alex. So I think so. Yes.
Okay.
I think it's going to be piles of cards, piles of tiles, piles of like little customizable minis, and the amount of time and work that goes into a project like this. I think it's a really good back. I also think it's a lot of money. I remember putting more than that into Seventh Continent and being let down by the experience.
Yeah.
Now, that was something that I wasn't able to prototype beforehand, and maybe I would have been able to see through it a bit more. But at this point, sitting here with this game in front of me, I don't know. I really like it. And I'm just me, but I'm a duck. That's worth something.